Recently, I covered a story about the mansion tax in Los Angeles. You see, what happened was, in California, they said, if you sell a mansion over $5 million, you got to pay 4% sales tax. Well, what happened? Sales collapsed. Nobody wants to invest in a property where you got to struggle to make back a 4% return. The housing market, the way it is, when you buy a property, let's say you go, I'm going to put $1 million down in a $5 million house. You have $1 million in cash. You go to a bank and say, I need the other $4 million. I'll do 20% down. You give me $4 million. I buy this property. Then you got fees. Those fees are going to be massive on a $5 million purchase. Now, on top of those fees, you got a 4% sales tax. So here's what happens. You buy the house for $5 million. You're paying interest to the bank. You need to sell that house at a major premium to get your money back. You buy the house, $1 million. What would the mortgage per month be on a $5 million loan? Let's do some quick math. So you're looking at what? Like, let's see, $2,000. So you're looking at like $8,000 or $9,000 per million. So you're looking at what, like $30,000 to $40,000 per month, maybe, I think would be. Yeah, maybe, man, might be more than that. Might be like $60,000 a month. I don't know because I don't own any properties that big. But now you're trying to make that property, make some profit. You're living in it. You're going to sell it for way more. So nobody wants to do it. But here's where it gets good, my friends, because the backfire is way worse. As it turns out, the mansion tax actually applies to large apartment complexes. That's right. Yeah, see, it's not just a mansion tax, it's a domicile tax. So they've got these big properties with like a dozen units for apartments in it for working class people. And now there's a 4% tax on top. Here we go. Washington Examiner says, one of the biggest reasons middle class families leave California each year is the unaffordable cost of housing. The Democratic Party, which controls LA, tried to address this problem by passing a mansion tax that would fund affordable housing projects. But like everything else Democrats do in California, the plan backfired, causing residential building construction to plummet, thus raising housing prices even further. Sold to voters as a tax on mansions, what the maneuver really does is impose an extra 4% levy on almost all properties sold between $5 million and $10 million, and a 5.5% tax on all properties over $10 million. These include not just large homes in Bel Air, but also gas stations, commercial real estate, condominiums, and apartment complexes. LA real estate brokers say the $5 million threshold means the new ULA tax will hit just about any apartment complex with over 15 housing units. This has discouraged lenders from offering mortgages on and developing from building the very multifamily projects the city needs more of to reduce housing costs. Since nearly 2/3 of homes in LA have asking prices of at least $1 million, working class families must often rent multifamily homes to live in. Co-star analyst Ryan Patap noted, developers are further discouraged by the city's broader political shift in the city that's more supportive of restrictions on landlords and more supportive of protections for tenants. Around the state as a whole, multifamily housing has trended above the national average, whereas new multifamily housing permit authorization fell nationally by nearly 19% from 22 to 23. California's only decreased by 5%. But in LA County, authorizations dropped by 19%, and in LA City, they slumped by a staggering 24%. The mansion tax appears to be to blame. Oh, I love that story where in Pakistan or India, whatever, I mentioned it like 12 times this week. They said, we got a snake problem. We need someone to deal with all these snakes. There's too many snakes. I got an idea. How about everybody go out and you kill a snake and you bring us the head of that snake and we'll pay you money. Did that end the snake problem? No, because for those that watch every segment, you've heard the story already. People just started breeding the snakes intentionally, making their population explode. They bred the snakes intentionally, killed the babies, and then sold the babies to the government for money. That's called subsidy. You are not paying for the end of snakes. You are subsidizing their existence. This policy plan from Democrats was, I know, if we tax the big wealthy houses, that money we generate, which should be $900 million, can be used to build affordable housing. And even with that money, nobody wants to do it because it costs too much. You're not going to make your money back. This is why command economies do not work. Unfortunately, This is what you get. In the short term, the taxes generated just $215 million, less than half of the $672 million in revenue the ULA's proponents projected. High interest rates are partly to blame for the sluggish home sales, but in LA, sales of single-family homes worth more than $5 million cratered by 68% since the tax went into effect, far more than the 19% they've fallen nationwide. Supporters have bragged that the legislation has already funded $23 million on eviction protection and tenant outreach, and $28 million on aid to distressed tenants and landlords. But neither of these programs do anything actually to lower rents for working families. The real protection Angelino tenants need is from a Democratic Party that is constantly passing new regulations and higher taxes that make new home and apartment construction more expensive. Until LA voters start electing leaders whose motto is build, baby, build, they can only expect their existing housing crisis to get worse. Unfortunately for all of them, my friends, they voted for this, and they will reap what they have sown. Like in New York, where women are getting punched in the face, I have very little to say to people in LA who vote for this stuff. They live under tyrants, but there is an option. Unfortunately, maybe the reality is there is no option anymore. There are too many stupid people, and there's nothing you can do about it. A democracy, a constitutional republic with democratic institutions, the ideas of the public and the people having a right to say in their government only works if the people actually know what matters. So I don't know what to tell you about the American Revolution. You had the founding fathers who said no to the crown, but the crown was very far away. And maybe the issue was the crown was so out of touch with what was going on, they could not maintain control. More importantly, the crown was at war. And so the colonists had an advantage. It wasn't just the French. I believe the Spanish actually assisted as well. And thus, the colonists were able to sever the ties of the UK. This crippled the UK, who are currently at war with these other European nations, and it cut off large sources of revenue and resources for them. It was war. As for those who live in LA, who live in New York, who live in Illinois, I suppose the only thing you can actually do is move out, because you are surrounded by people who don't know and don't care. Here's the reality. As they make it more and more impossible to own property, more and more people will rent, and more people will side with renters over landlords, taking away the ability of the working class to actually own anything. But don't worry. When you can't afford to own it, they'll continue to blame the wealthy and the landlords, and they'll say it's their fault the whole time that you can't afford these things. Don't worry. We got your back. And so what happens? Then the government comes in with the will of the people and seizes the properties. When these houses fail to sell and fall into disrepair, the state will claim them, convert them into public government housing they own and control. And what are they building? It's obvious. In China, you can't buy land. You can only lease it for 99 years, which means there is no generational wealth. There is no way to build a strong, successful family heritage. You buy the land, 99 years later, your great-grandkids or your grandkids say, I can't afford to renew it, and they lose it. This is what they're building in California. It will come to the point where the government owns all of the land, and you simply rent it from them. Don't worry. They'll make sure you have a place to live, and it's always affordable. It won't solve the problem of homelessness. In fact, it will make it substantially worse. The problem of homelessness, the left tries to go on and on about, has a lot more to do with mental health issues than anything else. They utilize the mental health crisis, pushing people out into the street and releasing criminals to justify policies that will destroy the ability of single individuals in the private actor. It will stop their ability to own these properties. And who comes in? Take a look at New York. Luxury hotel converted into housing for criminal aliens. Bill de Blasio, when he was mayor, said he wanted to buy up the properties whose values had collapsed due to COVID lockdown, turn them into public housing. Their intention is clear. You will own nothing and you will eat the bugs. But don't worry, you'll be happy. Why? Because you won't know better. When your kids grow up having never tasted real butter or a delicious steak with butter, they will crave their cockroach stew. Reminded of V for Vendetta, when Natalie Portman's character says, oh my God, is this real butter? And he's like, yes. She's like, where did you get it? And he's like, the chancellor's private delivery. And he's like, what? He stole it. See, the chancellor, the government, they get the good stuff. Everybody else, you get the fake garbage. That's where we're going. Keep voting for it, I guess. I don't know that voting matters anymore. Now it's just collecting pieces of paper. But we'll see what happens in November. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.